Connie Margotto. On July 31, 1976, Connie Margotto was born in Rockville, Connecticut, to Cindy and Kenneth. With a brother named Keith and two sisters, Marlise and Leslie, Connie was one of 4 siblings. The Margottas were raised in Ellington and Vernon. Connie completed her education at Ellington High School in 1995. Connie then enrolled at the University of Connecticut. She attained her undergraduate degree in 1999 and began working as a pharmaceutical sales representative for Reckitt Benckiser. Everyone who knew Connie described her as a warm-hearted, generous person who would do anything for those she loved. Connie had many friends and was popular among everyone she met. In the early 2000s, Connie told her close friends about a man she had met. His name was Richard Dabate, and Connie was smitten. He was a handsome man who treated Connie like a queen. When Connie was introduced to Richard's family, they immediately knew that she was the one for him. Richard, or Rick as he was known, was born on July 29, 1976 to parents Richard Sr. and Julie Dabate. He grew up in Manchester, Connecticut, and graduated from Manchester High School in 1995. After finishing high school, Rick attended technical school before beginning his career in computer network administration. Ricky and Connie married on July 4, 2003, and had 2 sons, RJ and Connor. Connie was a devoted mother to her boys, and Rick seemed like the perfect husband and family man. The Dabates lived in a beautiful home in Ellington on Birchview Drive. 2 of Connie's closest friends, Peggy and Darlene, lived in the same neighborhood. Their families spent plenty of time together, with Peggy and Darlene often joking about what a doting husband Rick was to Connie. From any outside perspective, life for the Dabates looked picture perfect. They seemed to have it all. In reality, cracks had started to show. December 23, 2015 started like any other day. It was a Wednesday, and everyone in Ellington felt the festive cheer with Christmas just 2 days away. At 8:10 a.m., Rick dropped Connor and RJ off at the nearby bus stop. While he was out, Connie dressed and headed to a spin class at the local YMCA. What happened next is unclear, as Rick has given many differing versions of events. This is what he first told investigators after the incident. Rick dropped off the boys and then returned home to change into his work clothes. Once he was ready, Rick got back into his car at 8:30 a.m. and set off on the 40-minute drive to work. He wasn't on the road for long until he realized his laptop was still at home. Rick couldn't work without it, so he went onto his cell phone and emailed his supervisor that he would be late. As Rick looked at his phone, he happened to see a security alert about a silent alarm that had been triggered at his home. He mentioned this in the email as well. Rick headed back home and cautiously went inside. Rick heard a noise coming from upstairs, and upon further investigation, it sounded like someone was in their main bedroom. The door was partially opened, and when Rick looked inside, he was confronted by a masked intruder. It was a large framed man standing roughly 6 foot 2 inches tall, wearing a dark green camouflage outfit and mask. The intruder pulled out a knife and told Rick something along the lines of, "Give me your money, your wallet, and your pins, and if you don't, I'm going to wait here for your wife and kids." The man had a deep voice, which Rick compared to sounding like Vin Diesel. Rick had been with the intruder for less than a minute when he heard the sound of their garage door opening. It was Connie. Her class had been canceled and she was back early. Rick screamed out to her desperately, trying to alert his wife to the danger in their house. The intruder then apparently turned his attention to Connie, and he and Rick were in a race to reach her first. In the struggle, Rick was pushed down the stairs and was briefly disoriented. The intruder managed to get past him and pursue Connie into the basement. Rick was able to pick himself up off the floor and rush to Connie's rescue, but it was too late. As he sped down the stairs, a gunshot rang out. It was so loud that his hearing was affected for several minutes afterward. The intruder turned his focus back on Rick, where he overpowered him by using a certain pressure point that caused him to collapse. The next thing Rick knew, he had been partially tied to a metal folding chair with zip ties. The intruder had grabbed a box cutter from Rick's toolbox and inflicted superficial wounds on Rick's body with it. The intruder next grabbed a blowtorch, which he used to burn random items. He then tried to use the blowtorch on Rick, but Rick was able to use his free hand and grab the blowtorch from the intruder. He aimed it at the man's face and burnt him, despite Rick previously saying the man had a mask on. The entire ordeal lasted 5 minutes before Rick scared the man off after the blowtorch incident. Looking at the original timeline, this meant that it would now be no later than 9:05 a.m. Rick only calls the police at 10:21 a.m. State troopers were already on their way, as a call had been automatically placed to them at 10:16 a.m. from the security company regarding an alarm triggered at home. This alert gets sent to authorities immediately. So why did it not get sent after the alert that Rick allegedly saw shortly past 8:30 a.m.? The first to arrive at 7 Birchview Drive was a member of the Ellington Fire Department. He noticed the front door was open, but the storm door was still closed. He knocked with no answer and proceeded inside. He first noticed a light layer of smoke that hung in the air. The basement door was open, and droplets of blood led from the basement toward the kitchen. The man followed the trail where he found Rick. Rick was still attached to the folding chair lying face down on the kitchen floor. Rick told the man that he is still in the house, referring to the intruder. The man quickly called for backup, reporting the crime as a home invasion, and soon a flood of officers were on the scene. They focused on locating the gunman as soon as possible. The investigators started taking note of everything in the house. They took multiple images of Rick on the floor, showing how he had been tied to the metal chair. Curiously, it was only Rick's left hand and left ankle that was zip-tied. Connie was found in the basement's boiler room. She had been shot twice, once in the stomach and in the back of the head. She was pronounced deceased at the scene. This was no longer just a home invasion. K-9 units were soon on the scene, hoping they would show investigators which direction the gunman had gone in. But the dogs seemed only to be focused on one person, Rick Dabate. One of the dogs found Rick's wallet on the lawn outside, presumably where the intruder had dropped it while fleeing. Still, the dogs could not follow a scent leading away from the property. Instead, they led their handlers to the ambulance where Rick was being treated for his superficial wounds. From the get-go, investigators saw holes in Rick's story. Rick was taken to Hartford Hospital. This is where he was first questioned about the events that day. He described the intruder to the investigators and told them he had seen the man shoot Connie in the basement. After he said his version of events, the investigators had some follow-up questions for Rick. This was when they noticed Rick's story changing slightly, which is always a red flag. There was confusion about the alarm system when Rick saw the alarm alert, and whether he had been the one who set it off. Initially, Rick said he left before Connie dropped the boys off. This changed to him saying he couldn't remember who left first. The next thing that changed was his explanation of the sound upstairs. Now, Rick hadn't heard a sound when he first entered. Instead, he went upstairs and noticed the bedroom light was on. He then came across the intruder rifling through their closet. The next story change involved the staircase. Remember that Rick first said he was pushed down the stairs. Now he was saying he tripped down them. Most important to investigators was the gun story. The gun used to shoot Connie was a .357 Magnum. It was one of Rick's guns that he kept in the house. He first told investigators that he was unsure how the intruder got the gun from Connie. Now he said he saw Connie and the man wrestling for the gun. The man pulled it from Connie, and he then shot her. Oh, and the basement was also dark during all of this, apparently. Rick told investigators how he dragged himself up the stairs still attached to the metal chair after he regained consciousness. He found his cell phone and called for help, all while calling out to Connie, hoping she would call back. Rick's injuries were conveniently located. The wounds to his chest were only found on his left side, and the wounds to his legs were all within reach of his right hand. This piqued the investigators' interest. He also had no injuries that would suggest he had been pushed or fallen down the stairs. The dried blood from the box cutter marks hadn't dripped down the edges of his legs like you would expect if the wounds had been inflicted while he was sitting on the metal chair. The other inconsistency that stood out to investigators was the lack of blood leading up the stairs. If Rick had dragged himself from the basement to the kitchen, you would expect to see evidence of that. Instead, only droplets were found on that path, and the only drag marks were found in the kitchen. Rick seemed to have walked upstairs before collapsing in the kitchen. Investigators were also curious why Rick hadn't tried to check on Connie. The evidence shows he hadn't been near the body after she was shot, as the pool of blood near her body was undisturbed. Investigators wanted to find out exactly how an intruder was able to get into the home. They theorized they had entered through an open basement window, as the rest of the house showed no sign of forced entry. But even this didn't make sense. The locks on the basement window were removed from the inside and just left on the windowsill. An intruder wouldn't have been able to access these locks from outside without leaving significant damage. So why would Rick or Connie have removed these locks without immediately replacing them? It is customary for investigators to question those closest to a victim to get an idea of their life in general and any possible problems they were experiencing. After running through that morning's events, the investigators asked Rick about his relationship with Connie. He started off by saying things had been pretty good, but added that Connie was going through some things lately. She was battling with depression and had been noticeably easy to anger, something very unusual for the usually cheerful mom of two. Rick did say that Connie seemed to be slowly returning back to her old self, though. The investigators then bluntly asked Rick whether their investigation would reveal any problems in their relationship, to which Rick replied yes and no. Rick revealed he had been having an affair, but he had an explanation for this. He claimed that both he and Connie were wanting to add another child to their family, but health problems were standing in the way of that. Connie was unable to conceive, and after several attempts, they decided to explore a different route. Rick told the investigators about Sarah, an old friend from high school who was newly divorced. Sarah also happened to want to have a child. Rick explained that the three of them, meaning Rick, Connie, and Sarah, got together and came up with a plan that Rick would get Sarah pregnant. Since the entire artificial insemination was so costly, the group agreed that Rick would sleep with Sarah and get her pregnant that way. He insisted that Connie agreed to the whole thing, even adding that was actually mainly her idea. So how would the parenting work? Apparently, all three of them would co-parent the child together. The investigators couldn't make sense of such a bizarre story and felt skeptical that Connie would agree to something like that. They asked Rick more questions about the situation, and yet again, his story started to shift. He told them that their baby was due in February 2016, but when asked whether Connie knew about the pregnancy, he wouldn't give the investigators a straight answer. If this had all been Connie's idea, surely she would have found out the good news as soon as Rick had. Rick then added that Connie and Sarah hadn't actually ever spoken. Yet again, this punched major holes in his story about Connie's involvement in the plan and their eventual co-parenting. By the end of the conversation, the real story came out. Rick had been unfaithful to Connie for years leading up to her passing. Sarah's pregnancy was also unplanned. The investigators didn't try to hide their disbelief. They told Rick that his entire story didn't make sense and added that the evidence at their home didn't match what he said happened that morning. He insisted he wasn't responsible for what happened to Connie. After hearing about Rick's affair, the investigators focused on tracking down Sarah. She was able to give them a statement later that same day. Sarah admitted to knowing that Connie and Rick were married, but said Rick had told her he was getting a divorce. Rick told Sarah that he and Connie had been unhappy for years and that the divorce was a mutual decision. Sarah found out she was pregnant on June 18, 2015, and waited until August to break the news to Rick. But when Rick found out, he told Sarah he had recently hired a divorce attorney. Like many other things had been, this was a lie. Sarah and Rick were still in an active relationship shortly before Connie lost her life, even traveling to Vermont in mid-December 2015. During this trip, the pair discussed how they would break the news to Connie. Rick wanted to wait until after the holidays to tell her. During subsequent conversations with Connie's closest friends, Investigators discovered that Connie would never have accepted Rick having a child with another woman. Connie shared everything with her close friends, who said she never mentioned Sarah or the child's situation. She would have undoubtedly told them if she found out Rick was unfaithful. While Connie's friends were none the wiser to Rick's affair, Rick's friends, on the other hand, did know about Sarah and the pregnancy. He told a friend how much he loved Sarah and that he was afraid Connie would leave him. The entire investigation team was in a precarious position. From the get-go, though, they felt that Rick was involved in his wife's slaying. This was something they kept private from the public. To everyone outside of law enforcement, they believed that an intruder had broken in and taken Connie's life, leaving Rick injured. Those close to Rick hadn't even considered the possibility that he had something to do with Connie's passing, and they grieved alongside him. While they clearly had a main suspect, the investigators didn't want to lose focus on exploring all possibilities. The Dabates did have someone who would potentially want to hurt them. They had been involved in a long-standing legal battle with a contractor who worked on the house. Connie and Rick sued the man in small claims court after multiple problems with the contractor's work, and Connie had even expressed concern about her safety. The man was difficult to deal with, and Connie's car had even been vandalized twice in 2015. She believed the contractor was behind it. After these incidents, the Dabates installed their security system and purchased guns. The contractor even came up multiple times when friends of Connie and Rick were questioned after her passing. But this lead fell flat after the contractor was found to have an airtight alibi on the day of the crime, and he didn't at all match Rick's description of the intruder. While no one other than law enforcement suspected Rick was involved in Connie's demise, many people noted odd behavior from him. He didn't seem to be grieving how you would expect. Not long after the incident, Rick placed a message on the neighborhood group asking everyone where they liked to get takeout food. This seemed off for a man who had recently lost his wife in such traumatic circumstances. As investigators peeled back the layers of the Dabates' lives, they uncovered some glaring financial issues. Money was going out faster than was coming in, and Connie felt like all the responsibilities were resting on her shoulders. She told her close friend she was thinking about separating from Rick and even had a file on her notes app titled, "Why I Want a Divorce." The reasons ranged from Rick's lying to his poor treatment of her and not being a good father to the boys and focusing only on himself. Money is often a motive in cases like these, and in mid-January 2016, investigators found out about 2 life insurance policies for Connie and Rick. Each policy was for the hefty sum of $475,000. It turned out that only Connie's life insurance was still valid as Rick's had lapsed due to non-payment. Rick waited just 5 days to claim Connie's insurance money. He also received $75,000 from her employer a month after her passing. Over the next year, investigators slowly built their case against Rick Dabate. They executed multiple search warrants looking into both Rick and Connie's phone records, financial statements, communications with outside parties, security system data, and most importantly, Connie's Fitbit. Connie's Fitbit showed she had first been active at 7:52 a.m. on the morning of December 23rd. This was followed by an extended period of inactivity, consistent with Connie driving to the YMCA, the search warrant stated. We know Connie arrived at the YMCA as she was spotted on surveillance cameras. Then her Fitbit again registered another 10 minutes of inactivity when Connie was driving back home. She was back at the house at around 9:20 a.m. From 9:37 a.m. to 9:43 a.m., she was stationary. Investigators believe Connie was just resting during this time. The next 20 minutes saw Connie moving around like normal. During this time, Connie posted videos from her phone to Facebook with an IP address linked to her house. The last time Connie's Fitbit picked up any movement from her was at 10:05 a.m. So why was this so significant? This information provided concrete evidence that Connie's life was not taken at the time that Rick stated it had been. Connie was alive and moving until 10:05 a.m., an hour after Rick said he had witnessed the intruder take her life. Once they felt like they had enough evidence to convict Rick Dabate, Authorities arrested him on April 14, 2017. He was charged with taking Connie's life, evidence tampering, and giving false statements to investigators. Rick pleaded not guilty to the charges. The police had a 50-page affidavit that included the Fitbit information, Rick's contradictions, and his affair with Sarah. The news of Rick's arrest rocked the close-knit community of Ellington. No one had given a thought to him being responsible. Even Connie's close friends, who she had spoken with about her marriage issues, thought many people go through difficulties without it ending like this. His bail was set at $1,000, which he posted immediately. Despite the mountain of evidence, it was a while before the case was actually taken to trial. It had been postponed twice before it kicked off on April 5, 2022. From his arrest to his trial, Connie's case received a lot of media attention. It became known as a case that was solved by a Fitbit, which Connie's family didn't approve of. They felt that it took the focus off of Connie to get a catchy headline. While it seemed like the prosecution had a clear-cut case, the defense was able to bring forward some damning information. Unidentified DNA had been found in the home in 6 separate places. This DNA coincides with Rick's story about the intruder starting off in their closet, moving down the stairs, and ending in the basement. The other evidence that the defense used was the gunshot residue found on Rick. The amount found on him was insignificant. You would expect there to be much more had he been the one to pull the trigger. The prosecution was able to counter this by explaining that the test had been administered hours after the trigger was pulled, meaning his hands could have easily been wiped or washed during that time. The prosecution stated a clear motive from the get-go. Rick's life was falling apart around him, with Sarah's pregnancy and Connie thinking about leaving him. Attorney Matthew C. Gdansky told juries, "Time is moving on. The pressure is mounting. The baby is coming, and the defendant's worst fears are going to be realized." Following the 5-week trial on May 10, 2022, the jury deliberated for 3 hours before reaching a verdict. Richard Dabate was guilty of all charges. Connie and her family finally got justice after 6.5 long years. Judge Corinne Klatt handed down a sentence of 65 years in prison. She called the crime a brutal, calculating, and incomprehensible act. She was only 1 year away from receiving the harshest punishment possible. Even though his attorney hinted that they would be appealing, it is likely that Richard will serve out the rest of his time in prison. Judge Klatt came to know Connie, who was a beautiful woman, during the trial. She was a devoted mother, a diligent worker, and many people's best friend. Without Connie, the world is genuinely a smaller place, as Judge Klatt so eloquently stated. Moving on to the next case. Felicia Maguire. Felicia Maguire devastated her family and friends when she disappeared on October 7, 2007, at the age of 32. She was last seen alive by witnesses in the Dorchester district of Boston. The police conducted extensive investigations and large-scale searches. She was never found, however. She disappeared under unclear circumstances, and the police were notified of suspicious activities by a person of interest. But soon, the investigation was closed, providing no closure for Felicia's loved ones. The Boston, Massachusetts neighborhood of Dorchester is situated in the city's southern region. It is Boston's largest neighborhood with a total land area of almost 6 square miles. Over 90,000 people from various ethnic backgrounds live in Dorchester, including Irish Americans, African Americans, Caribbean Americans, and Vietnamese Americans. Dorchester is now a rapidly developing neighborhood in Boston as a result of recent residential and commercial construction. This case we are looking at today takes place in this area. Felicia Maguire was born in 1975 in the lovely city of Dorchester. Although her father's identity is unknown, she was raised by her mother, Sharon Maguire. Felicia spent her formative years in a joyful household filled with love and laughter. She gave birth to her only son in 1997 and named him Nicholas Fahey. After the birth of her son, Nicholas became the core of her entire universe. It wasn't clear who Nicholas's father was and what had happened to him, however, remained a mystery. Felicia never left Dorchester. She continued to reside there with her cherished son and her mother, building a home that was warm and loving, regardless of the obstacles and difficulties life hurled at her. Over the years, Felicia got into a relationship with a man by the name of David Pina. She also shared a home with him. Despite the difficulties of being a single parent, Felicia never wavered in her commitment to her child's welfare. She put forth endless effort to make sure her child had the finest life possible. She went above and beyond to provide her child the attention and assistance he needed. Felicia Maguire was a great example of a selfless and devoted mother who prioritized the needs of her child before her own. She never let life's challenges break her spirit. Unfortunately, all her efforts to see her child excel and become a great person in the society came to a stop when on October 7, 2007, Felicia Maguire disappeared without a trace. The 32-year-old devoted mother was last seen in Boston, Massachusetts' Dorchester area, where she lived. Nobody is aware of what happened to her after being seen going about her business on Rixton Street. Sharon, Felicia's mother, was devastated by the disappearance of her daughter, and the confusion surrounding Felicia's whereabouts only made matters worse. She looked through every telephone directory and potential contact she could think of, but her effort yielded no result. Felicia's failure to get in touch with her friends and family as the days passed by caused them to worry more and more. After 10 days, on October 18, 2007, Sharon Maguire finally reported her daughter missing. The Boston Police Department immediately got to work and opened an investigation into her disappearance. They soon found out that Felicia's behavior was not normal and that she had ceased speaking with her beloved son and other family members. This raised concerns that she may have been the victim of a terrible incident. Since it was not in her character to vanish without informing anyone, Felicia's family was very concerned for her safety and well-being. They wondered where she could be and what had happened to her. Her son and family had to deal with the lingering doubts about her fate. As the investigation progressed, law enforcement personnel put in a lot of effort to find any information that would help them solve the mystery. In an effort to piece together a timeline of Felicia's final known movements, detectives questioned members of her family, acquaintances, and neighbors. A thorough search of the neighborhood, including neighboring woodlands and bodies of water, was also carried out in an effort to find the missing woman. Felicia's family got more worried as the days turned into weeks and the weeks into months. They never stopped wondering where their cherished mother and daughter was. The Boston Police Department was concerned about her disappearance as well. Because of the lack of information, they posted pictures of Felicia Maguire on social media in November 2013 in an effort to get any information that would help bring her home safely. They gave a thorough description of her in the social media posts. The police voiced great concern for her safety and well-being and listed her physical characteristics, including her height, weight, hair, and eye color. Felicia was a stunning woman with chestnut brown hair and piercing, life-filled eyes. She was a slim 5 feet 2 inches tall, weighed around 140 pounds, and had a medium frame. Felicia had been missing for more than 6 hard years, and as each day went by, the mystery surrounding her absence grew complex. Despite investing a significant amount of time and resources in the search for leads, her body had never been located. However, following the Facebook post in 2013, several witnesses' report of Felicia's disappearance remained suspicious. An unnamed witness, who reportedly lived below Felicia Maguire and David Pina's flat in 2007, told the police that he remembers Pina, Felicia's live-in boyfriend, showing up at his door in the early hours of October 7, 2007, asking for a ride to his mother's house in Devon Street. The neighbor noticed blood on his clothes, but at the time, Pina had claimed that Felicia had stabbed him with scissors. However, the blood on Pina's shirt suggested something much more heinous had happened. The witness claimed that Pina informed him that during their fight, had pushed Felicia against the wall with force, striking her head on the bed or dresser as a result. Pina then said he didn't know if she was still alive and seemed unconcerned about her fate. The witness continued to make observations of Pina. He claimed Pina's right hand was also swollen. When questioned why, Pina stated that Felicia had hit him with a baseball bat. Days later, 2 additional witnesses asserted that they had seen Pina return to the apartment on the same evening. According to them, around 3 or 4 in the morning that day, Payne returned home with another man and went upstairs. After some time had passed, they returned, dragging a blanket that may have contained Felicia Maguire's body down the stairs. The 2 witnesses attempted to assist but were turned away and told to mind their own business. To add to the mystery, another witness claimed that in 2007, after lending Pina his 2005 Chevy Impala in exchange for narcotics, he received it back with a shattered and freshly cleaned back seat. As the investigation went on, these troubling details led the police to suspect David Pina and raise doubts about what actually happened to Felicia Maguire. Without delay, investigators questioned David Pina about the case. They also discovered that he had a violent past with Felicia. Pina told investigators he was Felicia Maguire's live-in boyfriend at the time of her disappearance, and their relationship was anything but easy. Since Pina had previously told the first witness who had called the police that he and Felicia had engaged in a violent altercation at their apartment, the police questioned him about it. He then admitted that Felicia attacked him with a pair of scissors, stabbing him in the shoulder. Pina reacted by leaving the apartment and seeking safety at his mother's house, but when he came back a few days later, he made an unexpected discovery. Felicia had left, and her belongings had been taken. After the interview, investigators were forced to release Pina because there was no evidence against him, and he made no incriminating statements. Following this, the investigation into Felicia's death was a torturous journey full of detours that eventually led to every possible dead end. Although every lead was pursued and every piece of evidence was examined, the case grew colder with each passing day. Felicia's family and friends were in excruciating pain and desperately wanted explanations for her disappearance. For years, rumors and conjecture have been circulating regarding the whereabouts of Felicia Maguire, the adored mother who disappeared in 2007 without a trace. In 2017, when the FBI conducted a search in a heavily forested area of West Roxbury, fresh hope was generated. Days of investigation were conducted in secrecy with no information provided to the press, leaving the public to speculate as to what had brought the authorities to that location. The truth came out in the end. The investigation into Felicia's disappearance was in fact related to the search, and it was an essential step in the drawn-out process of learning the truth. The search turned up a witness who told the detectives the shocking information that David Pina had requested his assistance in removing items from his apartment in 2007, including a heavy rolled-up carpet. He added that Pina and his accomplice had placed Felicia's body in the trunk of a car before speeding off. The witness who saw this claimed that he instantly had the suspicion that a body was wrapped in the carpet and blanket. Sadly, he was right in his assumptions. Finally, with the aid of the witness, Pina was able to carry Felicia's body into a wooded area with a parking lot where they dumped Felicia's body. The investigators were almost close to solving the case, but they needed to find the location where Felicia's body was dumped. However, the solution to this seemed to be a mystery that would never be solved despite numerous leads and witnesses. Before learning what happened to her remains, the witness left the scene. It was even made worse by the fact that the witness had no knowledge of Boston and was unable to offer any suggestions as to where the body might have been dumped. The prosecutor was unable to offer closure to Maguire's family and loved ones because they had been given a frustratingly incomplete picture of the crime. A few years later, on January 14, 2023, David Pina was successfully arrested by the Boston Police Department's fugitive unit at the Florida's Baker County Detention Center. Pina was wanted for a murder charge related to Felicia's case from Dorchester District Court, and he also had an outstanding warrant from Suffolk Superior Court for trafficking cocaine. Felicia left her young son behind when she disappeared from Roxton Street in Dorchester more than 15 years ago. Her family and friends who have been looking for her for so long may finally get some answers thanks to Pina's arrest. On February 15, 2023, Pina showed up in court for his arraignment on the charges leveled against him. After more than 15 years of uncertainty and heartache, the case has attracted national attention, and this most recent development has revived hopes of discovering Felicia's remains. The family of Felicia Maguire now has some sliver of hope. Despite the fact that her body was never discovered, police have reason to believe that her remains are still somewhere in the Boston region. An investigation that had remained cold for a while has now received some resolution following the news of an arrest. Even though it was unable to bring their beloved Felicia back, Felicia's family and friends may finally rest easy, knowing that someone will be held responsible for her terrible abduction. Eventually, we hope, justice will be served. Pina is due to appear in court and is probably going to stand trial shortly. During this difficult time, Felicia's family and friends are in our prayers and thoughts. We can only hope that they may find some peace and comfort as they continue to heal from this unfathomable loss. What are your thoughts on this case? Kindly use the comment box below to share your thoughts. Moving on to the next case. Sophia McKenna. Sophia McKenna, 21, and her two siblings were raised in North Stonington, Connecticut. She lived with her mother, Michelle McKenna, when her parents were divorced. Her mental health suffered as a result of her parents' divorce, and in high school, she received a bipolar depression diagnosis. Austin Pero Cordova was her lover. Her mother claimed that the relationship was abusive. Both used to argue a lot, which sometimes turned physical. Austin apparently was seeing someone else, which of course made Sophia mad. One day, Sophia was to meet Austin, but told her mother that she was going out with some other guy and not with Austin. When Austin found out about it, he apparently became incredibly angry and went to Sophia's apartment. When Sophia wouldn't open the apartment door to let him in, he tried to kick her apartment door down and threatened to kill her. According to the police report, his exact words were, "I'll slit your throat." Meanwhile, Sophia began increasing the time she spent with Warren Spencer Mugford, 20, who grew up in Florida and had attended school at the University of Connecticut's Avery Point campus located in Groton, Connecticut. Spencer and Sophia were close friends and hung out together many times. They became friends while working at the Red Door Salon and Spa, an upscale day spa located in Mystique Marriott Hotel in Groton, Connecticut. They would eventually start dating but would break it off and decide to simply remain friends. Spencer had recently begun working at a local fishing charter where he took small groups of people out on the water for half-day fishing trips. Spencer grew up on the water and was a strong swimmer. On May 27, 2018, in the early morning hours around 1 a.m., Sophia and Spencer decided to go on a night trip to New London Ledge Lighthouse off the coast of Groton, Connecticut. Sophia had apparently received permission from Austin to go out with Spencer on the trip. Sophia and Spencer parked her car at the University of Connecticut, Avery Point campus. They then used one of the university's sailboats, a white 14-foot sunfish without a mast, and paddled their way to the lighthouse. The lighthouse is rumored to be haunted, and this may have encouraged their decision to visit it at night. The story goes that in the 1920s or 1930s, the keeper of the lighthouse, a man named John Randolph, was so distraught that his wife had run off with a local ferry captain that he jumped from the roof to his death. No records have been discovered to confirm or deny this, yet it's believed that his spirit still haunts the lighthouse. Since then, many have reported strange phenomenon at the lighthouse like doors opening and closing by themselves, unexplained knockings, bed sheets flying off of beds, cups moving around, boats unmooring themselves, TVs and radios turning on and off, the foghorn spontaneously sounding on its own, and other unexplained happenings. On that night, the temperature was below 60 degrees Fahrenheit. While out on the water, Sophia used Spencer's phone to post the video to his Snapchat. The video was of Sophia and Spencer out in the ocean. Spencer can be seen sitting on the bow of a small mastless sailboat paddling. Sophia pans the camera around to show the lights on the coastline behind them. A few minutes later, at 2 a.m., a photo was posted on Spencer's account. The photo that was uploaded was a picture of Sophia at the lighthouse. She was happy and had her tongue out with a big smile. From the picture, it appears she is standing on the stairs that go from a 2-foot wide lower ledge to the much wider upper platform right in front of a no trespassing sign in the lighthouse. This means that they made it out to the lighthouse. But what happened to them after that is a mystery. The next day, Spencer had a very important event to attend that he would not have missed. When he did not show up for the event and his family and friends couldn't reach him, he was reported missing. Meanwhile, Austin reached out to Sophia's mother and told her he was worried about Sophia as he hadn't been able to get in touch with her. Michelle had let her younger daughter play with her phone that morning. When Michelle got her phone from her to call the police, she noticed there were 7 missed calls from an unknown number. The calls came back to back. The first missed call was from 2:05 a.m., and then 2:06 a.m., and then 2:07 a.m. Then there were 3 missed calls at 2:08 a.m., and the last missed call came in at 2:09. None of the missed calls resulted in a voicemail. Sophia's mom later stated that she was sleeping and missed the calls. She tried calling the number back, but it went to voicemail. The voicemail said, "You've reached Spencer's cell phone. Please leave a message." As Spencer didn't know her number, she knew it had to be Sophia trying to reach her. Realizing something had gone horribly wrong, she immediately contacted police and reported her missing. The U.S. Coast Guard began their search for the young adults at approximately 6 p.m. that evening. Michelle desperately tried to get anyone she could involved in the search, but the Coast Guard advised against that due to harsh weather conditions. Sophia's car would be found parked on the campus with her cell phone still inside. This would explain why she was using Spencer's phone to Snapchat and to call her mother. At approximately 6:30 p.m. on May 27th, the shirt Spencer had been wearing in the Snapchat photo was found tied to a cleat at the New London Ledge Lighthouse. It's believed that Spencer used his shirt to dock the boat at the lighthouse. The following day, on May 28th, Austin and his father decided to go on their own to search for Sophia and Spencer. While flying in a private plane, they spotted a sailboat similar to the one Sophia and Spencer had piloted. It was a small, 14-foot sunfish sailboat that was laying upside down on the Truman Beach in New York, approximately 8 miles east of the lighthouse. Police believed it was the boat used by Sophia and Spencer. However, this has never been confirmed as 100% accurate because they reported the pair was on a paddleboard. They claimed that the broken paddle was inside the upside-down boat. The boat was described to have growth in the hull and partially was buried in the dirt and rock with a light layer of dust and dirt, which would have been impossible unless the boat had been there for many days, and not for the only 24 hours it was supposed to have been. Also, pictures that were taken of the boat as evidence showed unidentified fingerprints on the boat, but no fingerprints were taken to be analyzed. The Coast Guard would suspend their search on the night of May 28th due to rough seas. They told the family that they searched everywhere they could and cannot resume the search unless something is found to steer searchers in a different direction. On June 8, 2018, 11 days after the disappearance, the body of Spencer Mugford was found by a commercial fisherman floating shoeless in the ocean, nearly 2.5 miles from Ledge Lighthouse in the opposite direction from where the boat was found. The boat went one way and Spencer went the other way. His cause of death was determined to be drowning. Although Spencer was now found, they did not resume the search for Sophia. In addition to Spencer and Sophia going missing, 2 other men had gone missing that same day, although it is not specified at what time they went missing. Their bodies would eventually be found as well, but Sophia's never would be. Although there was no body and no indication that she drowned, police believe she is not missing, but already dead. The family does not know if Sophia called anyone else that night to ask for help. Spencer's cell phone has not been found and his cell phone records have not been released. So far, no witnesses have stepped forward. It is unknown if the two were followed or had someone else with them that night. The security cameras at the college and the lighthouse were reported to be merely decoy cameras. There is no video evidence available at this time. On July 22, 2018, Finding Sophia McKenna, What Happened to Sophia Facebook group, was formed to find answers to some of the questions that people have been wondering, such as why was the search ended so quickly when other searches go on for many days? Where is Spencer's phone, and why have they not checked all of the phone records of Spencer knowing that his was the last phone to be in Sophia's possession? And most of all, why were the fingerprints from the boat never analyzed? These are just a few questions that still linger in people's minds. Now, after reading all the facts about this case, we came up with this likely possibility, and it seems we're not the only ones. Many other Redditors have picked up on it as well. So here's what we believe might have happened that night. On that night, after leaving their car at the campus, Sophia and Spencer took the boat and paddled their way to the lighthouse. After using his shirt to moor the boat to the lighthouse, both went into the lighthouse and took the Snapchat photo of Sophia. Shortly after, the boat came loose and started drifting away from the lighthouse. Since the boat was their only way off the lighthouse, Spencer, who was a strong swimmer, gave his phone to Sophia and jumped into the water to get the boat back to the lighthouse. At that time of night, the water must have been really cold, and since Spencer had already paddled their way to the lighthouse, he must have been extremely tired and exhausted. He probably started struggling in the water and drowned. After a few minutes, Sophia becomes worried and starts calling out to him. When she doesn't hear anything, she begins to panic. Now, since they had stolen a boat and were already trespassing, she might have thought against calling 911. It is also worth noting that Spencer had been charged with a DUI 5 days prior, and Sophia had been arrested in February for breach of peace and assault along with Austin. So she wouldn't want to get in trouble with the police again. So she instead decides to call her mother for help, but all her calls go unanswered. Now frantic, Sophia starts calling out for Spencer again, kneeling near the edge of the water. At some point, it's possible she may have slipped and fallen into the water. The current may have been too strong for her, and she too would have drowned. Sophia was not a strong swimmer, so it's within reason to think that she wouldn't have jumped after Spencer willingly. Moreover, if she did decide to jump after Spencer, she would have wanted to leave Spencer's phone behind in the lighthouse to make sure the phone doesn't get water damage, and so she could call someone after. But the phone was never found in the lighthouse. Naturally, this is only a theory, and there is a chance that foul play is at play. It was the start of Memorial Day weekend, and many boaters celebrate at this time, so a lot of people were out on the river. Normally, the black of night at 2 in the morning is not a popular time on the water. Could they have been discovered? Or did someone find Sophia and take her while she was yelling for Spencer? Sophia's relatives remained hopeful that she was still alive and possibly being detained against her choice. Moving on to the next case. Tanya van Calenborg. The adventurous and free-spirited Tanya van Calenborg was born in Sonic, British Columbia, Canada, on March 7, 1969. Her bold decision to attend her high school prom wearing a man's tuxedo was a sign of her rebellious spirit as a child and an early indication of her independence and unorthodoxy. Tanya's decision to travel throughout Europe with her best friend, May Robeson, just before meeting her future lover, Jay Cook, demonstrated her love of travel and her curiosity about the world. She was deeply impacted by this experience, which influenced her desire to travel more and stay away from obligations that would restrict her. Tanya had obligations, even though she preferred to live a nomadic existence. To fund her adventures, she worked part-time as both a dog walker and a waitress at Pickwick's, a British-themed restaurant in Vancouver City. Her decision to skip college and work towards her goal of traveling reflected her determination to chart her own path. Born on December 16, 1966, J. Roland Cook hailed from Saanich, British Columbia. By the time 1987 rolled around, Jay, at 20 years old, was grappling with a sense of directionlessness. Uncertain about his future, he faced the pressures of adulthood without a clear vision of his goals. Raised in a family with a strong work ethic instilled by his father, Gordon Jay, along with his two sisters, contributed to the family business, Cook and Talbot Limited Heating Specialists, a small family-run company specializing in furnace installations. Although Jay was contemplating a shift toward marine biology, he engaged in the family business to occupy his time. Jay's reputation as a responsible and reliable individual stretched back to his high school days. At social gatherings, he demonstrated his caring nature by intervening when a friend faced potential harm due to excessive drinking. He once abandoned his job at a pizza parlor to cycle through rain for 3 hours to join friends, showcasing his spontaneous and lively side. Jay's life took a significant turn when he met Tanya through a mutual friend in July of the same year. Tanya was drawn to Jay's caring and responsible demeanor, and their relationship quickly blossomed. Despite uncertainties about his own future, Jay's willingness to take on challenges and his dynamic personality endeared him to those around him. Tanya and Jay's relationship, though relatively short-lived, was marked by a sense of adventure. Tanya's initial hesitance toward settling down was juxtaposed with Jay's eagerness to carve out a future together. Their decision to embark on a work-related trip to Seattle reflected not only their commitment to each other, but also their shared enthusiasm for new experiences. Unfortunately, this trip would take a dark turn that would cost both Tanya and Jay their lives. The plan involved a scenic route starting with a ferry from Victoria to Port Angeles, Washington, followed by a drive through various highways to eventually reach Seattle. Initially, Tanya tried to invite her best friend May to join them on the trip, but May had to decline due to illness. Reflecting later, May could not shake off the guilt, wondering if her presence might have altered the tragic events that unfolded. The young couple embarked on their journey on November 18, 1987, in Jay's father's 1977 Ford Club van. The purpose of the trip was for Jay to pick up the furnace from a supplier in Seattle. Despite a minor detour and a missed turnoff, the first leg of their journey seemed uneventful. However, the last confirmed sighting of Jay and Tanya was at a ferry terminal in Bremerton at 10:16 p.m., where they purchased a ticket to Seattle. The following morning, when the supplier waited in vain for them to collect the furnace, concerns set in. The Van Keelenbergs and Cooks, both families linked by the missing couple, reported them missing on November 20th. Despite mounting worry, law enforcement hesitated to open a full-scale investigation, citing the lack of evidence of foul play. As the families anxiously waited, Bill Van Kuylenborg, a lawyer, took matters into his own hands. Frustrated by the lack of progress, he organized a helicopter search, but the vastness of Washington state thwarted his efforts. On November 24th, a devastating discovery was made when Tanya's half-naked body was found in a ditch near Parson Creek Road in Skagit County. She had been assaulted and bound with plastic ties and an execution-style shot in the head. Tanya's father, Bill Van Kuylenberg, was called in to identify his daughter. Following the gruesome discovery of Tanya Van Keelenberg's lifeless body near Parson Creek Road, investigators uncovered several crucial pieces of evidence that further deepened the mystery and horror surrounding the case. A bartender at Essie's Tavern in Bellingham reported finding Tanya's wallet and a set of keys behind the bar. Initially considered lost property, the bartender's realization prompted by news of Tanya's case led to him contacting the police. The wallet's contents were identified as belonging to Tanya, sparking a closer examination of the area. As investigators delved into the surroundings, additional clues began to surface. Zip ties similar to the ones used to bind Tanya were discovered, linking the crime scene to the one at Essie's Tavern. This detail suggested a potential connection between the location where her belongings were found and her slaying. The investigation took a pivotal turn when the team located a van matching the description given by Bill Van Keelenborg. Jay Cook had been driving this van, and it was found in proximity to Tanya's body. Upon inspection, the inside of the van revealed a grim reality. It was covered in blood belonging to both Tanya and Jay. The state of the van, coupled with the blood evidence, raised immediate concerns about Jay's well-being. Initially considered a potential suspect due to his unknown whereabouts, Jay Cook was now viewed as another victim. The evidence strongly suggested that he too had met a tragic end, dispelling earlier suspicions that he was involved and perhaps responsible for what had happened to Tanya. On November 26th, a man named Scott Walker stumbled upon Jay Cook's lifeless body during a hunting trip in Snohomish County, just 50 miles from where Tanya had been found. If Tanya's crime scene had been gruesome, Jay's discovery was arguably even more chilling. The scene was grim with dog collars and twine tightly wound around Jay's neck. Disturbingly, tissues and a pack of cigarettes had been shoved down his throat, causing asphyxiation. Severe head wounds and bloodstains on his clothes suggested he had been subjected to brutal violence, possibly even torture. The timeline of events surrounding Jay's end became a critical aspect of the investigation. Given that the couple's van was found closer to Tanya's body than to Jay's, it was reasoned that Jay's life might have been taken first. The disturbing implication was that the perpetrator might have eliminated Jay to facilitate the assault on Tanya without any hindrance. The grisly details of Jay's demise painted a horrifying picture, leaving investigators grappling with the enormity of the crimes committed against the young couple. As law enforcement worked tirelessly to piece together the sequence of events, the haunting question of who was responsible for such brutal acts loomed large. While Jay's discovery provided some closure to his family, it intensified the urgency of solving the case. With both victims now confirmed to not be alive anymore, the focus shifted to unraveling the identity of the perpetrator responsible. In the aftermath of the brutal slayings of Tanya Van Cuylenburg and Jay Cook, their families faced a new wave of torment in December 1987. An anonymous letter writer claiming to be the man responsible sent threatening letters to both families. As investigators delved into the letters, the anonymous writer was eventually eliminated as a suspect, leaving the families with more questions than answers. Detective Jim Scharf, deeply affected by the heinous nature of the unsolved case, played a pivotal role in seeking justice. In 1995, he helped form a cold case team, and the case of Tanya and Jay became one of their earliest assignments. The quest for answers took a significant turn in May 2003, when investigators examined the van belonging to the victims. Among the critical pieces of evidence found were Tanya's black pants, on which male DNA was discovered. The DNA did not match Jay Cook. This unidentified DNA labeled individual A became a crucial focus for investigators. Despite uploading the profile to CODIS, the FBI's National Offender Database in 2003, there were no hits, leaving the case in a frustrating standstill. Over the years, Detective Scharf faced numerous theories and false leads with over 200 names crossing his desk. In 2015, a woman named Chelsea Rustard, who was unrelated to the victims, uploaded her DNA to a public database to explore her family tree. Little did she know that her DNA would become a crucial piece in unlocking the mystery of what had happened to Tanya and Jay. The breakthrough finally came on April 25, 2018. Inspired by the Golden State offender's arrest, Detective Scharf, eager to leverage the same technology, collaborated with Parabon Nanolabs and genetic genealogist C. Moore. Individual A's DNA was uploaded to GEDmatch, and within hours, Moore identified second cousins, enabling her to construct a detailed family tree. The name that came up was William Earl Talbot II. To confirm the match, investigators trailed Tabith, a trucker, until they were able to retrieve a discarded paper coffee cup. Forensic scientist Lisa Collins subsequently confirmed the match between the DNA on Talbot's cup and individual A. On May 17, 2018, after over 3 decades of searching for answers, William Earl Talbot II was arrested. The families of Tanya Van Cuylenborg and Jay Cook who had endured years of uncertainty, were notified of this significant development. For Detective Sharp, it was a momentous occasion, bringing a sense of closure and justice to one of the most perplexing unsolved cases he had encountered. In June 2019, William Earl Talbot II was convicted and sentenced to life imprisonment without parole for taking the lives of Tanya Van Cuylenberg and Jay Cook. However, on December 7, 2021, an appellate court overturned the conviction due to juror bias. This decision led to the possibility of a second trial. The appellate court dismissed the idea of a retrial on December 22, 2022. On the same day, however, the Washington State Supreme Court intervened and upheld the guilty conviction. The defense's decision to not dismiss the disputed juror through peremptory challenges was highlighted by the court. On December 22, 2022, Talbot is still being held. Thanks for watching. We hope you enjoyed exploring these intriguing cold cases with us. If you found the video fascinating, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to Cold Case Mystique for more deep dives into unsolved mysteries. Your support helps us bring you more compelling content. Leave a comment below with your thoughts or any cases you'd like us to cover next. See you in the next video, and remember, the search for truth never stops.